All right. So, welcome everyone to our first industry hour of the semester. Tonight we are featuring biomedical engineering, and we have one alumni and two current students with us to share their experience. A little bit of our agenda today. We're going to talk about the services at the Center for Career and Professional Development, or the CCPD, and we'll do our formal interview with our panelists just to hear from their experiences as a past student or current student, co-op internship opportunities, things like that. So we're super grateful to have a wide perspective with our BME students today. And then we'll do, a little Q&A. So, write your questions in the chat. We'll get to them at the end if anything specific. And this is being recorded. It'll be posted up on our YouTube and our podcast. So we will add that as well. I'm going to pass it on to Karen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Lewis, and I am one of the Hub advisors helping Kelly today. Thank you for joining us. So the first thing that we always try to preface any of our industry hours with is the support that you can get as a student in the Career Center, well, also known as the CCPD. We have a specific dedicated counselor in the CCPD who is here for all engineering students. Her name is Kristen Kettering, and her contact information is there, her photo as well. She actually is hosting an event in the Ansel Lounge, which is right outside of the Hub in the School of Engineering in the JEC, coming up soon. So we will be giving some information about that will help you prepare for the career fair that will be coming up towards the end of the month. And even though a lot of you are going to be first year students that are listening to this, we encourage you to attend and connect with Kristen sooner than later, because she is a key part in getting engaged with all opportunities off campus as well. So the services that they provide, a big thing that she's going to be featuring in next week would be resume prep for the career fair. They do have drop-in hours Monday through Friday from 1 to 3. So we do encourage you to set up appointments, but you can drop in for quick questions. Handshake is the platform that the Career Center uses, and you're going to see job postings and different opportunities there. And you can kind of customize your profile to kind of have you receive all the information that you're really interested in receiving. So get on Handshake, set up an account, and start engaging sooner than later. They're located in the DCC basement. So if you're in the JEC and you cross through the courtyard, their entrance is right over there. And we're always happy to show you if you have questions about finding the location. Okay, so RPI has a lot of relationships with employers, and this is just a sampling of some of the companies that BMEDs have been employed with previously and currently. And we're actually featuring some of the alum today, as you know. So this is something that you could see the full list of engagement that we have with outside employers through the Career Center and through Handshake. Now we have some average salaries featured here. This is the entire School of Engineering, and this was reported for the class of 2023. So there's a broad range. Biomed's around $74,000. And this is just so you know, these are surveys that are sent out to alum just to have them report what they actually received as salary when they began working as an engineer. So you could see all of our majors are featured on this slide. And again, there's a ton more information on Handshake. So if you do want to learn more about this, you can definitely tune in there or check out their CCPD's website. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly so she can start the interview. Do you want me to stop sharing, or we have more slides, right?
Sure, you could go on to the next slide.
Okay.
So I will have our panelists introduce themselves. So Mike, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Arbolita, RPI class of 2019 and technically 2020 as well. So a little bit about me. I, after graduation, stayed local to the area. Ended up going to Regeneron and did some drug product manufacturing as an engineer for them. And then about 2 years into my journey at Regeneron, ended up going to Stryker just to get back a little bit to my orthopedic research roots and a little bit more of, I guess, what was interesting to me at the time. And as of actually a few months ago, I made the switch to Johnson & Johnson. So doing some supplier engineering and metrology for them.
Cool. Thank you. And Janet, we'll go with you. And I guess I should have mentioned where you're from, a little bit about your journey so far and what you're studying. A quick synopsis of whatever you got.
Oh yeah, my name is Gianna. I'm currently a senior in biomedical engineering and I'm focused on materials more than anything at the moment. I've done 2 internships, one in product development side of things and one in the manufacturing side of things at Edwards and Stryker. So a little bit of overlap with Mike there, but some different experiences have given me a good view on kind of the range of what biomedical engineering can be. I'm also minoring in music. I know we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. I'm from Texas, so I do have a cowboy hat on my wall. Yeah, I came up to New York to go to RPI. I have some family on Long Island. And I'm kind of expecting to stay in the Northeast post graduation, but eventually want to make my way back down to the South. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Lila, go ahead.
Hi, so I'm Lila. I'm a senior too, and I'm a BME and DIS dual. So DIS is Design, Innovation, and Society. With biomed, I'm mainly focused on biomechanics, but with my dual degree, I bring in a lot of focus on disability studies and human-focused design, which I think is really important. I've done an internship with Dr. Eric Ledette at the Center for Disability Services. In the incubator, I was doing research on autistic communication and different devices that could be used to help that. And I'm also a TA for engineering processes during the school year. I've been doing that since my sophomore year, and I really like it. I'm originally from Freetown, Mass. I'm not really sure where I'm going to end up after graduation. It partly depends on grad school since I'm planning on doing that. And I'm applying to grad schools in a lot of different places. So different range of places I could end up.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I can't wait to dive into all of this. Karen, you can stop sharing and then we'll get right into the questions. So we'll go ahead and start with Mike. What made you decide to be a biomedical engineer?
Yeah, it's a little interesting. So I grew up with a few doctors in the family actually, and pretty much since a young age, they were exposing me to, I think, what a lot of people would say is some pretty gnarly stuff, some open brain surgery, spinal surgery, things like that, and that kind of fueled a little bit of my interest as I was going through high school. And as I landed at RPI, I knew that I wanted to either go, the pre-medical route or stay somewhere along the lines of biomedical engineering. So kind of took a leap of faith, went into biomedical engineering, not really knowing what to expect, but being, obviously pleasantly surprised by, I guess, the opportunities that are really offered at RPI as a biomedical engineer. I think you can really make the most of it as a career, and it allowed me to stay close to, I think, the people in our society that need it the most. So that was really my motivation to become a BME.
Cool. Thank you. And then Gianna, and Lila, we'll start with Gianna. What made you want to major in biomedical engineering?
Actually kind of a parallel story. My mom's a veterinarian, and so ever since I was like 5, I was going to her work and helping draw blood or do heartworm tests and all that kind of stuff. So I saw that side of things, but I also saw the side of things where she was interfacing with customers or her patients at the time. And I didn't really like that because there's kind of a lot happening in the people dynamics. So I wanted to do the medical work, help people, help save lives, help progress the medical field without having to deal with patients. So I kind of wanted to be more behind the scenes device materials focused. So I guess that's where I kind of got it from.
Cool. And Lila.
Yeah, so I actually took my first engineering class in 7th grade because that was what my school did. It was I think a way to help with STEM research because there's some STEM research showing that exposing younger girls to STEM earlier makes them more likely to want to go into STEM fields. and I loved it. It was like my favorite class that year, and I was like, I immediately knew that was like what I was interested in doing. I loved science, I loved math. It felt like a really good combination of the two. And as I got older, I just like I really wanted to help people, and I really wanted to like combine a lot of my interests, and biomedical engineering felt like a way I could do that. Like especially because I grew up doing a lot of art and artistic design. So having biomedical engineering, like I feel like there's a lot more focus on aesthetic, especially with like um different types of research in it because you're designing for people to use these items potentially every day for the rest of their lives. It needs to be something that they can live with and love. So,
That's really cool. The STEM outreach really reminds me of a program that we have of engineering ambassadors going out to high schools. So if
yeah.
there's anyone out there that wants to apply, they're always looking for students as well to make that impact, and introduce STEM to our younger people. But that's really awesome.
So
Next question.
Kelly,
Oh, go
can I
ahead.
pop in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm actually a recruitment coordinator for engineering ambassadors.
Oh, look at that.
Kelly was
Perfect.
talking about. So I run all of the recruitment efforts, the application process, the interviewing, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Yana. All right, next question. Mike, what is your day-to-day function of your position? And I know you just started your new job too. So what was that transition like? And tell us about what you do currently.
Yeah, so it's a little bit new at Johnson Johnson right now. I'll start, maybe with something that's a little bit more, I guess, well known, manufacturing engineering at Stryker. So, manufacturing I think really entails a pretty wide array of things from, obviously upkeep of equipment, making sure that, the current processes, controls, and things that you have in place for the product that's coming through the plant is well understood, well developed, making sure that we're putting out quality product. I mean, that's really the name of the game as a BME. These are really critical components that are going to be going into the body of people. So, there's very, very little room for error. So during my time at Stryker, I really got involved with automated visual inspection equipment. So things that would really kind of take a little bit of the human element out of inspection and making sure that we had good data on how our product was coming out on the other end of the manufacturing process. So that experience with kind of automated visual inspection systems kind of led me to Johnson Johnson and becoming a metrology engineer for them. So currently right now, a lot of the components that Johnson Johnson uses in their heart pumps are actually outsourced. So we have tier one suppliers that'll bring in, really precise metal components. And um, obviously we don't have eyes directly on their processes at all time, like, we would at Stryker when you're in control of the product from start to finish. So that'll come into a designated inspection area at our plant, and we have to make sure that the product is of the utmost highest quality. So right now we're working on a lot of new age and advanced inspection equipment to make sure that these really, really tiny metal components are good to go, and make sure that when, our end user has our heart pump, that everything goes the way it's supposed to go.
Sounds really important because we want to make sure those things work. It kind of reminds me of what Gianna said earlier about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff to ensure that this product, is top quality. That's really cool. Do you seem to like it so far? It's something that you're going to stay there long term?
Yeah, I think so. So far so good. I'll be honest with you. When I was graduating, I had no idea what a metrologist was, and kind of understanding a little bit more about the field now. It wasn't exactly a career path I had in mind, but seeing the sort of equipment that is in development, and seeing what you can do with it has been extremely interesting. I'm definitely a hands-on kind of engineer, so I like tinkering and playing with equipment and trying to make it better. So
That's
far so
awesome.
good.
Cool. I also did not know what metrology was. I looked it up after you told
Yeah,
me.
not many people do, I feel like.
That's cool. Well, you're in a niche field. You're needed.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And still with you, Mike, what is your favorite day, part of your day as being an engineer in your new role?
So I'm not always in the clean room as a metrologist. So really my little home base at J&J is in our inspection lab. But every once in a while, we'll get a chance to kind of go out into the clean room, gown up, and see our operators assemble these heart pumps and see, the components that we get in the thousands eventually make it into a full functioning heart pump. And just seeing it boxed up, sterilized, and knowing that eventually it's going to make it out to a patient that may really be struggling right now. I think that really hits home. I think, as an engineer, when you're kind of going through, RPI and all the classes you inevitably struggle through. I think we all, at the end of the day, just want to make a difference, and I think a heart pump is a pretty tough one to beat. So,
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And Gianna, can you tell us about a favorite experience you had as an intern? You mentioned Stryker, or any other experience that you had so far.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of recap my internships, I did one internship with Edwards Life Sciences making prosthetic heart valves. So on the kind of on the heart pump train there. And that was in manufacturing. Again, kind of piggybacking off of Mike, also clean room stuff, getting to see operators and whatnot. And then at Stryker, I did product development. So more of the engineering stereotype where you're at your desk, you're doing new work, you're doing studies, you're doing CAD work, you're writing tool paths, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of have two little experiences to share. So in the manufacturing world at Edwards, we were in California and gas was pretty expensive. So me and my team would carpool everywhere. And I had my car in California, which was really fun. And so I had like my manager, a senior manager, another manager, like all these high level people in my car. And when I was driving them, anytime I would turn, they would all put their hands up and they would go, wee! And they would like lean on each other in the back seat. Cause I drive a Civic, so it was really crammed. And there was like a yellow light and they're like, go Gianna, go, go. And so that was fun to also to tell us about our manufacturing plant party. It was going to be at an aquarium. Our plant VP put on goggles, a snorkel, and flippers and walked into work to announce that it was at an aquarium. So that was awesome on the plant, but on the more technical product development side, I had the opportunity to use a lot of data and a Stryker specific software to come up with an algorithm that predicts a bunch of things that surgeons want, basically. And with that, I had the opportunity to talk to chief engineers who are kind of like the top of the line people at Stryker who are making all the engineering decisions. And I got to talk to a surgeon who would be using this, who's going to publish my study, and being able to talk with surgeons about something that they are going to use in the future. If you know what the Mako is, it's something that's hopefully going to be put on there soon. And so being able to like hear a surgeon say, I want this, this will impact my work. He even said this will make me more comfortable when I do knee replacements. And hearing that about your work, even as just an intern, was a phenomenal experience. It feels like all those late nights at RPI was worth it.
That's awesome. It's nice to know that engineers are funny, but also very serious, and you're making an impact. Those both sound like really unique experiences, and I'm really grateful you had those. Lila, same for you. What was your favorite experience so far?
Yeah, so as my internship, so I did a very research focused internship. It was mostly like grad students I was working with at the time. So very like, and I was doing very like beginning stage research. So like population, like what do these people need, like design, like finding out what the problem statement is. Which is really interesting for me, and I feel like it's something that like you don't get to do a lot in your classes here. A lot of the time we're given like a problem and it's like, okay, here's how you solve it. And part of what I found really interesting is even when I do this beginning stage design, a lot of it is still like assumptions when you're doing it in design classes, because like we don't have the resources to go out and talk to like a ton of people in this like minority population group. But because we were working for the Center for Disability Services, I was able to go into schools and sit with speech therapists and just like observe them on their day-to-day life and talk to them about what they needed, and come up with some different ideas about like what different directions the company could go with this project and how they could potentially like make something new that would be beneficial to both autistic individuals struggling to communicate and the speech therapists working with them, which I thought was really special.
That's the research we need. That's the literature review, and you're going out there and finding out. That's really cool. Thank you. All right, Mike. As a BME, you're required to complete certain technical electives for your degree. Can you tell us a little bit about those tech electives you chose and your overall experience in those courses?
Oh man, you really tested my memory now. I don't know if I'll be able to name them exactly, but you know, I do remember taking muscle mechanics and modeling with Dr. Core, which was, I think, one of my favorite classes I ever took. He was an incredible professor. And also the advanced orthopedics class with Dr. Ledet. So those are two classes, obviously kind of having that interest in the medical side of biomedical engineering that I really enjoyed. And, you know, they were 4,000 level classes. So, you know, they're definitely tough, and the expectations when you get to those levels they're high. You know, obviously you're working with professors who are extremely knowledgeable in their field. So there's no way in hiding when you show up to present a paper or present an exam. So yeah, it absolutely incredible experience. The faculty was, you know, extremely supportive. They ultimately just want you to learn and push you to be the best engineer you can be. And definitely highly recommend, you know, you go out and talk to some professors about the classes that they offer and see if you can find something that suits you best.
Yeah, and I mean, even more timely, Gianna and Lila are probably taking technical electives now, or they're planning on it. So, Gianna, tell us a little more about the technical electives that you're taking now or have taken.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned before, I'm kind of more on the material side, or was, until I did an internship in orthopedics, and now I've shifted a little bit, which is what's really cool about technical electives is you can pick and choose the field that you kind of want to go into. So I've taken more of like a breadth approach. So I've taken technical electives in chemistry and biology, and they still count towards my degree, which is great. And then I've taken technical electives in BME, a class called Drug and Gene Delivery. It's awesome. I love it. Now I'm doing research with the professor that taught that class. So that's been just a great experience to be able to build on my class knowledge. I'm also taking an intro to polymers class, which is a lot of, again, very material heavy. A class called mechanical behavior of materials, which is where I'm trying to jump more into the orthopedic side of things. We don't really have that clinical orthopedics class, so I'm trying to substitute that with something else right now. And that's a main class, a mechanical engineering focus class, but they welcome BMEs, they love us there. So it's been exciting to pick and choose where you want your degree to go.
Thank you. Lila, what have you taken?
Yeah, so last year, my junior year was mostly me finishing up my my DIS degree. I have like one class left for that. So last semester I took a few advanced classes for that specifically. I took politics of design and I took biology of everyday life, which I'm actually sure it's a new class. So I'm not sure if it's like offered all the time yet. But both of those were really interesting, much more on like the design and humanities side of things, talking about ethics and how you think about different design and how design has changed over the years. And then biology of everyday life was about like personal research. So it was an anthropology class, which I thought was really interesting and was a really good intro to like how you write technical papers, and like a research-based paper that you would actually like publish as a thesis or in a journal. This year I'm taking biomechanics 2, which is also with Dr. Core. And then I'm doing modeling and control of dynamic systems, and I'm planning on doing mechatronics next semester as a follow-up to that. Since my research area that I like am interested in is biomechatronics, to go into prosthetics. So that's like a good like starting pathway that should lead into like grad school coursework nicely.
That's awesome. We get a lot of questions about prosthetics, so that's a nice plug for that track. I got one today on, you know, it's the beginning of the year, but we get a lot of questions about it. So that DIS combo definitely helps
Yes.
with that goal in mind, and the mechatronics class. I'll keep that in mind with my advice. Okay, next question. This is for all of you. So actually, no, it's just for Mike. Many students often ask about the type of work engineers do. Specifically, is your position more hands-on or is it more desk-oriented? You kind of mentioned this a little bit, but can you tell us what category your work falls into?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably right in the middle. So, there's definitely days where you're stuck behind a desk, filling out investigation forms on something that went wrong in the process along the way, or, reviewing batch records from components that are coming in from our suppliers and things like that. And, those are some days that you kind of just have to get through, and they might not be the most fun, but unfortunately, that's the reality of being in a highly regulated industry like the FDA. So, definitely that side of my job. And then the fun side is actually being able to go out into the lab and, either CAD up some sort of fixture for, a new component that we have to inspect, or tinkering around with equipment and doing validation work and things like that. So, yeah, it's kind of right in the middle. And the way I kind of look at it is you kind of have to get through the boring days to be able to reward yourself with the exciting days. So, yeah.
Cool. So it's a nice combination of both. We're gonna go back to you, Mike. What did your undergrad experience look like? Did you do internships for your professional groups, your undergrad research, or any other extracurriculars? And can you make any recommendations for organizations or clubs for our current students?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into RPI as a baseball player. So I actually got recruited to play baseball at RPI. So that definitely took up a large amount of time outside of class, but I still found time to do some other things. So just like I think it was Lila had mentioned, she was doing research with Dr. Eric Ledet. Before he actually moved out to the Center for Disability Services, he was actually a faculty member at RPI. And his lab was really revolved around innovative medical devices and seeing how we can collect data from medical devices that might already be out there to let surgeons know how their patients are healing. So did a little bit of undergrad research. That research actually carried me into my master's. So I was able to kind of leverage that and complete my co-term Master's of Engineering and Mechanical Engineering. So baseball, kind of undergrad research that led into graduate work, and then just kind of trying a little bit of everything. I think the biggest thing or biggest piece of advice I can give students is to just go out, and especially like at the beginning of the semester when clubs are really looking for new members to join, just go out and try it. And even if you don't like it, you'll meet some incredible people there, and they can recommend other clubs to you. I know Formula SAE was one that I think if I had to go back, I'd probably end up joining. I'm a big car guy, so that probably would have been a natural fit for me, but unfortunately just didn't have the time to do it. So just go out there, explore, and have fun.
We'll quote that advice. We'll make that the head. Gianna, make it quick. I'm kidding. I know you're involved in so many things. So let's get the quick list of all of your experiences that you've done at RPI.
All right, I'm on it. I'll keep it short. I've also done the undergraduate research program. I've worked in Dr. Gilbert's lab, who teaches drug and gene delivery, teaches biomaterials. They do spinal cord injury research, but I've also worked with making novel proteins and cell models and 3D cultures and magnetic stimulation of astrocytes. So kind of a bunch of different things, which has been super cool. And with research, absolutely try to start early. You can send as many emails to as many different professors as you want. I've been working in this lab since my first semester of sophomore year, so I've gotten to build a lot of experience and even teach our new PhD students on some stuff. So it's been great to just be consistent with that. I also play in like every music group possible on campus. So the orchestra, the wind symphony, the chamber ensembles. And I've had a bunch of cool experiences through that. I've even got to play in Massachusetts twice so far through RPI, just saying like, hey, we need people to go do this. So that's great. Music on campus is phenomenal. And we have MPAC, which is awesome. You can like hear your blood pump in there if it's quiet enough. So it's an interesting thing. I also am a senior mentor in our chemistry mentoring program. So I've helped mentor freshmen through chemistry for 3 years now. Now I get to mentor mentors, which is super awesome. Engineering ambassadors, again, STEM outreach. We do K through 12 outreach to underrepresented schools so that students can learn about engineering, learn about the possibilities that are within engineering. And without a group like ours, they probably wouldn't have been exposed to something like that. So I love this program. It's phenomenal. It's my baby, watching it grow. And I've also done that since I'm a sophomore. So been consistent with that. I do the demos for chemistry, which is a super niche thing. Chemistry 1 does a bunch of demos, and there's a team of us that does all of those. So long story short, there's a bunch of opportunities, and most of my opportunities I got actually through talking with professors, not being scared to go ask them about their research, ask them about what opportunities they have, where do they need student leaders, and that sorts of thing. Like Dr. Ma approached me after my freshman year and just said, "Hey, you want to come work in a lab and do the demos?" And absolutely, because I was in his office hours, I was talking with him, he knew who I was, and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, like Mike said, get out there.
Dr. Ma loves stealing our students.
He's
So
still trying to convince me to be a chemie. I'm a senior. He's still
always
trying.
right. Awesome. Thank you. And Lila, tell us more about your experience and your extracurriculars, especially in DIS land. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, so I'm a fairly busy student just with being a dual as a BME. Like I love it, but it's not the easiest thing in the world for free time. And I also get chronic migraines. So that's also like kind of limiting on like how much energy I have to do things outside of class. Um, so I did outing club and climbing team my freshman year. I now climb by myself when I have time, but it's also just like it is quite a big time sink. So, and I went caving a lot with outing club freshman year too. I really like caving. But I've done all the caves around here now, so it's like when I move somewhere new, I'll probably pick that back up again. Um, and now I do a lot of hobbies on my own just because it's a lot more flexible, like to do things by myself. I crochet, I do art, like I sew, I read a lot. I do a lot of like art-based hobbies, just in general, I always have. So that I tried to carry that with me through college. And DIS has been a great way to foster that as well. And then on top of that, DIS has monthly meetings as like a student group. So it's a good way to get in contact with like all of the different people in that community. We're a fairly small major, so it's really nice to like get to know people. A lot of my really close friends from college are from that major. So it's great to get to see them. And it's also really great to like get involved with the younger DIS students, the freshmen, and see what their like aspirations are, what new duels we have, anything like that. And we do some great events. We do a mending event. We did a mending event last year. We're hoping to do it again this year. Um, and things like that that I really like being involved in.
That's awesome. Sounds like DIS was the perfect match
Yes.
for you and what your goals are. How did you hear about DIS, or when did you declare the duel?
So I actually declared the duel in my first semester freshman year,
Smart.
really early.
Good.
So I came into RPI with like my Haas elective being Studio 1 for DIS, and I met Raquel Velho in my Studio 1 class. She teaches Studio 1, not right now, she's on sabbatical, but she normally teaches Studio 1. She is the best. I love her so much. Um, and she heard that I was a VME and immediately was like, you need to add DSS to dual. We never get VME DIS duels, and it's such a great combination. And I think at the time there was one senior who was a BME DIS dual, Sonia. Um, and I talked to her and like again coming into RPI as like someone who's being an engineer but can't like has a lot of artistic experience. I took AP art in high school, I took art classes like all through growing up. I really wanted that aspect still. And already finding that like a lot of my engineering classes didn't focus on aesthetics at all, and we didn't really get to do a lot of hands-on stuff. And DIS like kind of brought all of that together. I got to do a lot of hands-on projects. I have a ton of project experience. Um, and like I get to focus on aesthetics. I get to focus on making things look beautiful as well as work well. And learning how to design intuitively is just something that like I feel is so important when you're doing like especially for me like going into prosthetics. Like people are going to be using these prosthetics every day of their life. Like it needs to be something that they know how to use like just by looking at it. They don't want to need to like use an instruction manual to figure out how to operate this. And also something that they're happy with, that they're not that like makes them feel happy with their body is something that's also really important. And I think having this dual has given me a really unique perspective on the design process and engineering that I think is really beneficial for something like designing prosthetics.
Yeah, completely. Like I said, we get prosthetic questions all the time. So I'm super grateful you found that dual super early.
Yeah.
And you're really making the most of being an RPI student. And we miss Raquel a lot.
I will say, like, I got very lucky in the fact that I found the dual very early. And on top of that, I also like came in with about a semester worth of credits. I was actually planning on graduating a year early and then decided to do a dual instead. And with that, my course load hasn't been as bad as it could be. But like, if you, I'd say like if you're not adding it early, if you're not coming in with a lot of credits, it's a very difficult dual. Just because they're both fairly small majors with like one period per class. So it's like a lot of schedule rearranging, a lot of like having an Excel sheet and moving everything around every semester. And I think it's great, but I wouldn't like, I would say be prepared. Like if you want to do a DIS BME dual, like it's definitely something you have to like be prepared from, start early, like, and make sure you're like speaking up for yourself and like meeting with your advisors and like having those conversations early rather than later.
Yeah, we've read my mind, but all the credit questions is what we talk about a lot. We don't want to, you know, we're pretty real with students. We're like, well, this is it.
Yeah.
And whether you brought in credit or you didn't, this is the path to get there. So it's really helpful to have a student perspective and vouch for what we've been saying. So thank you for that. Okay, next question. Mike, we'll come back to you. And it's for everybody, but we'll start with Mike. So very often students ask if the courses that are required for the major are used in the workplace. As an engineer or internship position, do you find that to be true? We get questions about CAD a lot. You did mention CAD earlier, so I appreciate that. But even other specific courses, what have you found that is, you've used before that is being applied today?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you kind of get into, engineer is very math heavy, so you're definitely going to get into some math courses towards the end of your 4 years at RPI, where you're probably sitting there wondering if you're going to use it, and you might not. It all depends on the type of problems you're working on in industry every day. But I will say, a lot of the stuff that we learn, the fundamentals like, statics, dynamics, how materials work, CAD, engineering processes, things like that are things that we use day in and day out. And I think, even if you do run into a class that you might not necessarily use out in the real world, I think the most important thing to remember is it teaches you a different way to think about, a problem that eventually you might run into. So you never know. I think it's important to stay focused, even if it seems like some of the things you're learning are super niche and focused. I think it really does help you just become a better engineer overall.
Cool, thank you. Gianna, tell us about your course experience.
Yeah, totally agree. So Kelly's laughing at me because my course experience is kind of everywhere. Like I said, I've taken a 6 credit biology lab. I've taken way too many chemistry courses than BMUs need. So I'm kind of all over the place with that. But honestly, to echo, not all of the things I've taken I'm going to use, and I know that. I went into my 6 credit biology lab and my research lab URP program knowing that I don't want to be in a lab for the rest of my life. However, I want to know, how do I tackle those problems? What do I do if I'm, you know, left alone and this project has no direction and now I need to go solve complex problems? And that is pretty much exactly what happened in my internship. My manager sat me down and said, "Hey, you need to make an algorithm. Here are your inputs." And I said, "What, where, how, why, when?" And she said, "You figure it out." And without taking those classes where I've had to, do technical writing and do technical things, even if it's not, directly related to spinal cords or directly related to epithelial cells, my thought process, like Mike was saying, how I'm picking myself up through failures and all that kind of stuff, knowing that failures are okay and they're expected. I had a manager at one of my internships tell me to put in my final presentation, "I failed," in big letters, because he loves that I failed and he loves that I worked through it. And so being able to do that mentally, I don't think I would have been able to have those experiences without taking those kind of classes, knowing that the technical stuff wouldn't necessarily apply. But even like technical writing, I always said, you know, why do I need to take writing classes? I'm an engineer. And then I got thrown into an internship where they expect me to write a paper. And I was like, okay, touche. Why do I need to take statistics? I don't want to be doing this. And then at my internship, all I had to do was stats for an algebra. All right, here we go. So on that side of things, it definitely does be open-minded with where you can apply things. I wound up using all of my materials classes in my product development internship. On the manufacturing side of things, I didn't use as many of them technically. I was doing product and process improvement, which is more like where can we take out the waste in our process? How can we make things more efficient? Talking to operators, what are their pain points? How can I help them? And on that side of things, again, the problem solving, I know we'll probably talk about what classes that we struggle with and how we got around them, but that thought process was the utmost important thing. I was validating a fridge, and out of all things, I was like, oh, it'll be easy. Of course, the fridge works. But I learned about temperature probes and temperature mapping and how to do the stats on that. And it took me like 6 weeks of temperature mapping before I could figure out how to do it correctly. And yeah, it's tough because you learn all these new things application wise. But again, that thought process I would not have had without the classes that I've taken.
That's cool. A 6-hour biology lab always seems to come up. But you figured it out. That's important. All right, Lila, tell us about some of the courses that you've seen and being applied to your work too, especially the DIS, stuff too. That's super interesting.
Yeah, so I felt DIS has been like incredibly helpful with BME classes, and with my internship, I used a lot of that because, like I said, like a lot of BME classes and like design classes for engineering specifically just don't talk about beginning stage research. And that's like all of what I was doing. Whereas a lot of my design classes focus really heavily on like research and so like in Studio 3, which is our first more advanced studio where you get like, to kind of do your own project. It's a semester-long project, and like you're given very little instruction on what you're doing. You're coming up with your problem statement, you're coming up with like the project. You're doing everything, and you're just given like deadlines to hit. And I think the entire prompt we were given was the word displacement. So my group decided to do a felt board bag that was made to be used in play therapy for kids with PTSD. And the bag came with sets of each of like different felt board pieces and different shapes that could be put together, and we made sets that like would apply to different types of common trauma that kids could experience, so like medical trauma, like fires, domestic violence, and things like that. And we worked with like an actual speech therapist with that. My mom's an occupational therapist, so I got to talk to her colleagues about it, and someone who had like trained in play therapy, and got to talk about this with her and like what would be useful for her. And she's like, I'm always on the move. I'm never in my office. Like this would be great. Like I would love to actually have this product to be with me. Which I thought was just like a really great experience. And then like coming into like my internship, being able to take that kind of research experience and apply it to what I was doing there, especially with a problem that like I think originally started as like, oh, well, like we'll do research and prototype all in one summer. And we started looking into the problem and we're like, no, the whole summer is just going to be like researching into this because it's just such a big area to look into. And then with like with my BME classes specifically, like I wasn't using a ton of those in my internship, but I am probably going to be using a lot of them in my grad school. Looking at grad school and like what classes are required, what I'm required to know going into it. Like I'm seeing like all of these things that I've already learned, that I've already like experienced and seen, which is great. And then like I'm kind of the opposite of Gianna. Like all of my classes this year are all focused for like what specifically I'm going into because I don't have a ton of wiggle room because of my dual. So like I said, I'm taking like biomechanics 2 this semester, which is great. It's a great course. Dr. Core is like very good about like designing that course to meet like what biomedical engineers need specifically and not like dumbing things down. It's like what you're gonna see in the real world, which is great. I'm loving the course so far. And then like ModCon and Mechatronics are both like really useful courses. Very standard for like doing any sort of like system modeling in the future. So I'm really glad that I'm able to take those as a BME, even though that they're technically mechatronics, me mechanical engineering classes. So yeah, that's my experience.
So cool. And does Sandy teach the megatronics class?
I'm not sure who teaches it. I'm taking it next
Okay.
semester. There's two different
Oh, okay.
professors depending on the
But I
semester.
think Karen's nodding. I think that is what Sandy typically teaches, so definitely a good choice. Okay.
Sandy and Josh Hurst are usually the ones, but
That
they're
sounds right.
incorporating new people into, and they're awesome. So
I've heard great things about both of them.
for sure,
Nice. Thanks, Karen.
no problem.
Okay, now Gianna kind of teased it a little bit. Mike, what was one course that you struggled in at RPI, and what resources did you use to succeed in the class?
Yeah, that's an easy one. So I think it had to have been first semester of grad school. I did end up doing my master's in mechanical engineering, like I'd mentioned before. One of the classes that we had to take was mechanics of solids, which was essentially, physics one and mechanics and on steroids, pretty much. I didn't know that there were so many differential equations they could describe, a pretty simple object. And honestly, our homework problems were probably about 10 to 12 pages long. So it was a lot. It really was. The homeworks took quite a bit of time, and the math you had to get really good with. So um, honestly, best advice I can give is don't be afraid to go talk to your professor. Don't be afraid to talk to other students in class. I can guarantee you if you're struggling, there's probably a good chance that a lot of people struggle in the class. These classes are meant to be tough. They're meant to push you and challenge you and kind of mold your brain into thinking certain ways. And so, the professors know that, and I think, majority of them are extremely understanding. So if you're struggling with the class and a professor has office hours on their schedule, be the first one there and the last one to leave, and make sure that by the end of the office hours, you've had all your questions answered. That's the biggest advice I can give. Don't go home that night thinking that you'll be able to figure it out. It's better to kind of just be a little bit humble and admit that you don't know something and just learn it. I think that is a significant portion about being an engineer is not knowing the problem that you're facing. That is exactly what we do, and you just have to find ways around it and solve it. So don't be afraid to ask for help and reach out when you need it.
Cool. Thank you. Gianna, how about you?
I mean, stole the words from me. There's many of classes I've struggled in. I wouldn't say there's many that I haven't struggled in. I struggled in biomechanics. My first time seeing a 3D coordinate plane was in college, so I had absolutely no background about it, and it definitely was a tough one. I struggled in that 6 credit bio lab I mentioned, biomedical transport phenomena, bioimaging, all these different classes. However, what has been consistent is always going to the professor. We have tons of professors here that are more than willing to help, and they like when you help. I was the first person in one of my professor's office hours, and she told our class, and she was like, I need you to come here. I've had one person, and I want you to come to my office hours. And they practically beg you because they want to see you show up. They want to see you learn. And in biomechanics specifically, I would go to this professor's office hours for honestly anywhere between 3 and 6 hours a week. And she would sit in front of me, she would handwrite a problem, turn the paper around, and push it to me, and I would just work on the problem in front of her. And as I went, she would critique me and help me and give me, advice. With the cell biology lab, I was the only engineer. It's not an engineer class by any means, but my professor, Dr. Klein, was willing to sit with me, probe my engineering mindset, help me find a way to merge the engineering and the biology. He taught me everything else I needed to know because he let me come in without one of the prereqs. So honestly, the professors are more than helpful. And even if you don't want to go to the professors or you're nervous about it, there's ALAC, which is always having tutoring. There's usually a TA, or some classes even have undergraduate mentors that are there to help. But yeah, going to professors has been a savior.
Cool. I love that professors are so helpful during, not all of them, but it seems like that one was, the most helpful in your time. That's good.
Yeah, speaking about that real quick, a lot of
Yeah.
professors also, a lot of professors teach obviously different courses and they change fall to spring to summer. And for example, like Dr. Muhammad didn't teach biomedical transport phenomena when I took it, but because I had spent so many hours in his office during bioimaging, he was willing to meet with me outside on his own time to teach me transport, even though he wasn't teaching it, that wasn't his job. So yeah, it's great.
That's helpful. Once you
Right.
make a connection with a professor, it makes a world of a difference because not all the professors teach the same, and
Sure.
not all of them will have office hours the same either. But I'm grateful Dr. Muhammad was able to still meet with you. That's because you had that connection from your previous class too. So good advice for our first years. Cool. And Lila.
Yeah, so I guess to start, as a note for anyone considering a DIS tool with BME, you're not going to have as much time to go to office hours as you might like to. I very rarely find office hours that actually work with my schedule. So like you either have to be really on top of reaching out to professors or like find your own way through the class. Um, I've actually found one of my best resources to be like students who have already taken the class. I had a lot of friends who were seniors freshman year who helped me with like IEA and all of those basic classes. Um, and just like reaching out to professors separately. The class I probably struggled with the most was advanced systems physiology, just because like I am not a memorization person, and that class is a lot of memorization. So, like for me, that was a lot of notes, a lot of asking questions when we got to take got time with the professors, like emailing them if I had questions outside of class, and just like really putting the time towards it. I spent a lot of time on that class. I have like a textbook's worth of notes, but like um, yeah, it's just like I spend a lot of time by myself working through things, and I think that's good in a way, but it's probably not the best way to do all of it. Um, it's just like I said, like my free time and professor's free time does not always align well. But on the flip side, I know all of my DIS professors incredibly well because there's not that many of them. So like I've had them for like I had one semester where I was with the same professor for 6 hours straight, 2 days a week. So I know him super well now. I see him around. We talk, like it's great. And I know if I ever need like a reference or like to talk to him or anything like that, like he'll he'll be there. He'll let me like come visit, and that's great. So it's just like mixed bag.
Yeah, it's nice to have those connections and the timing. And Mike was probably similar to with baseball practice. So finding in those office hours can be tough. They have to write them on their syllabus,
Yes.
but
But
helping and
even just
there's an
like if
alternative
you
time
can't
to.
make the scheduled hours, like I found most professors are willing to meet with you separately if you email them or whatever their preferred mode of communication is. Um, ever like not being afraid to ask for help is really important.
Yeah, cool. Okay,
Can I add
we're
something
almost.
too?
Oh, go ahead, Karen.
Just because I went to a meeting earlier today, ALAC launched their drop-in tutoring schedule today. So that is also a resource for the dual students, namely just because I think there aren't enough hours in the day. So the tutoring is in the evening. So hopefully it doesn't conflict with major coursework. So students who are struggling, especially with those first and second year courses, can utilize that service as well. Shameless plug.
Love it, Karen. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right, Mike. Based off your experience, are there courses, we take economics, computer programming, management, Gianna mentioned writing earlier, that would help strengthen your marketability as a BME graduate seeking employment?
Yeah, I think you can't ever go wrong with taking CAD. So I think there's two different versions of it when I went through. There's one that was a little bit more abbreviated and one that was a little bit more, longer, more focused on, engineering drawings and CAD. So that's something that I use on a daily basis. It's something that I think picking up early on in your career is super useful. If you decide to go into um, undergraduate research or even going into grad school, the ability to read an engineering drawing, CAD it up, and get some sort of prototype is extremely invaluable. And I'm even going to say too that don't be afraid to reach out and go to take an economics class, take a technical writing class, take an art class, something that will kind of change your perspective on on the engineering problems that you're saying. So, sometimes I think engineering can feel a little bit of an echo chamber. It feels like, especially when I went through it, it was a lot of suffering, and we were all kind of going through the same thing. So sometimes it's good just to talk to other people who aren't in the same mindset as you and getting just different perspective on what's out there. So yeah, I'd say those two things. Really getting beefed up on CAD. That's something that I employ every day, and then taking the opportunity to go explore some other majors and schools at RPI, I think is a good way to get just a different perspective on things.
Cool. Out of curiosity, what program for CAD do you use?
So I use a few. So Stryker, do a little bit of SolidWorks. They do AutoCAD as well. Haven't really used Siemens NX since my times at RPI, unfortunately. But that's something that, depending on what industry you go to, it's a little bit more used in certain industries than others. So definitely SolidWorks and AutoCAD have been the two big ones.
Cool. Good to know. Just out of curiosity, we get questions about it. All right, Gianna, what courses do you think helps, with your internships and your marketability, getting those internships?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little biased taking classes from everywhere and doing music, but it's funny. I've had a couple people tell me to take the music stuff off my resume. I have like a little line about what I do in orchestra and all these different classes. But every time I've had an interview, they've asked me about it. Every interviewer has said, tell me about orchestra. What do you do here? Why have you continued it? How long have you been playing? Or they themselves play an instrument and they want to know what I play. So I think having something like that that shows a little bit of your personality is definitely, I would say, marketable from my experience. Also, this isn't something that's on my resume, but just a talking point. Engineering processes where you go and make a train or a cannon or a lightsaber out of aluminum. They hand you the stock and they say, go. And it was a great class because when I was, again, at Stryker on the manufacturing floor, because they wanted to, bring the upstairs product development people onto the floor so we could get some experiences, one of the older gentlemen that was leading the class kind of, nudged at me and said, but you've never seen one of those before. And it was a drill press. And I was like, no, sir, I made a cannon. Here it is. I know what this is. I know what a lathe is. I know what all these different things are. I've used them. I've done it before. I've seen the drawings. And so having something like that to have a conversation with, the people that are actually making your designs happen is something that I also think is incredibly important.
Cool. Thanks, Gianna. And Lila, what would you say with your marketability and what your goals are?
So first of all, Gianna, that makes me so happy to hear because I'm a TA for that class. So I love machining. I think it's great. It was actually pretty useful at my internship. We had a ton of it was basically we had a whole machine shop in the lab I worked in. And when I did my interview, we walked around and Dr. Ledette was just asking me what all the different machines were and seeing what I knew. And it's I knew most of them already because I work in that lab and it's just it's the best. And I think that's a great class. Obviously I'm biased, but I think any of the DIS classes are great for marketability. I think they're great. I think they make you a much more well-rounded engineer and give you such a different thought process. That's really great. And I guess my kind of weird one, I think art students are art is a great elective for engineers. Not saying you have to be an amazing artist to be an engineer, but being able to sketch a semi-accurate drawing of what you're doing is so helpful. So I've found that to be really useful, not having to pull out a computer to CAD something to show someone I want to do a basic design and just being able to do a little sketch is great. I haven't actually taken any art classes in college, which is sad to me. I love doing art, but I grew up doing art. I came in with a lot of those skills already, so I need it. But I do think that's a really invaluable skill to have as an engineer that is often overlooked now that we've moved into the digital realm of CAD and CAD software. So
No, that's good advice. And maybe one day we could keep taking those art classes, but DIS has taken the precedent.
yes.
But we didn't sugarcoat it, to our students out there. That's you want to do the dual. It does take a lot of work and a lot of time.
I do think it's totally worth it though. If it aligns with what you want to go into, I think it's totally worth it.
Cool. Well, we're wrapping up here. Just final thoughts, any last minute advice you want to give to our first year students? They are a week and a half in to their 4 years at RPI. So, Mike, anybody, if you have any final thoughts for our first years?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I wanted to tell John, I'd never stop putting your music stuff on your resume. That stuff's extremely important. You know, they want to see that you're a person. Like, yeah, at the end of the day, we're all people. We all have our interests, and they love seeing that stuff. So don't stop putting that stuff in. I think that's super awesome. You know, final thoughts. It's going to be a long journey. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The years I spent at RPI were tough. They challenged me probably in ways that I had never been challenged before. I was, you know, thankfully pretty gifted student leaving high school, and got to RPI, and there were some classes that really had me questioning my intelligence at some points. But you know, it gets better. You're gonna suffer through some things. You're gonna have to grind it out, and at the end of the day, it's all just a learning process. So don't let that bring you down. And I think the one thing I do want to leave the students with is just taking care of yourself, and um, taking care of your bodies, eating right, finding time to go out and exercise, enjoy your friends, and enjoy doing stuff that you like doing with your friends. You know, it's also, it's supposed to be a fun time. And those are going to be some of the best memories that you have leaving RPI, is the time that you spend with your friends and can kind of going through the same thing together. So
Cool. Thanks, Mike. John and Lila, no pressure. You don't have to. We've given a lot of advice today. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple words. Also, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
again, similar along the same lines, but in my first year, I was definitely struggling with like some imposter syndrome things, some should I really be here things. You know, you see the kids that don't have to study or that always do everything well, and or so it seems. And so, you know, I definitely some thoughts like Mike said, like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be here and that sort of thing. But the people that I've met my freshman year are now the people that I'm working with in senior design and capstone, and my roommates, even my roommate from, or somebody that was just in my dorm my freshman year, I'm now, you know, sharing a house with, which was awesome. And the little things, the clubs that I found my early freshman year or late freshman year or early sophomore year that I felt like I'll just show up to a meeting are now clubs that I'm running. And the URP stuff where I thought, okay, I'm just gonna send out some emails tonight. Like I just, you know, did, you know, delay send, and I just had them send all out one morning, and I was like, whatever, you know, I'll come do it later. And now I've been doing it for 2+ years. And so it was really like I kind of found those little things that I really liked, stuck with them, and it's been a great experience since then. So definitely find those people, like Mike said, do things for yourself. I definitely did not do as many things as I needed to for myself in the beginning, and my roommate made me go to the farmers market and eat ice cream with her and make bagels and all these sorts of things. So it's definitely important. But don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to not know. And even in the industry internship experience, people love when you ask questions. I've had to tell my manager like, hey, you can't speak in acronyms. I'm new here. Like, can you just give me all of the words? And those questions feel silly, but they're looking for that, and they hope that you have that so you can show drive and all those sorts of things. So it'll all be okay. We've all had those experiences, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you have more questions.
Thanks, Fiona.
Hmm?
Lila, any?
Yeah, I definitely want to like bolster what Mike said about like taking care of yourself. I feel like freshman year it's really easy to just like get lost in like the excitement of being at college and away from home for the first time and like not sleep for like a year and then crash. So like definitely like take care of yourself. I think prioritizing sleep is really important, even if a lot of college students don't do that. And take care of your mental health. Like school's important, but like if you need a day, you need a day. Like, that always comes first. And like cherish the friends that you make because they're gonna be like the people you know for the rest of your life. Like, it's very it's very great. Like it's gonna be tough, but it's a good experience.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is lovely. You all are awesome, and you really have unique perspectives and experiences. So, I really hope our students, you know, get a lot out of this. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap this up here. Again, this will be posted on our YouTube channel. But any questions, feel free to reach out to all of our panelists here today, or reach out to me and I can get you in touch. But that's it. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
thank you,
guys.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Mike.